So, when you hear the name Isaac Newton, what comes to mind? Probably an apple falling from a tree, right? The laws of motion. Basically, the guy who wrote the rule book for the physical universe. He is, without a doubt, an absolute giant of science.
But what if I told you that gravity wasn't the only powerful, unseen force that drove him? What was the real engine behind one of the greatest scientific minds in all of human history? Well, the answer? It might just surprise you.
Because that popular image we have of Newton, the purely secular father of physics, well, that only tells about half the story. Not even close, actually.
Okay, so first, let's just quickly touch on the Newton we all think we know, the figure who really stands at the bedrock of modern science.
His masterpiece, the Universal Principia Mathematica, it gave us the universal laws of motion and gravitation. He revealed a cosmos that wasn't chaotic or random. Instead, it was a universe that operated under these consistent, predictable, and honestly, beautiful laws. He gave us a universe of pure order.
But here's the thing. Mapping out the mathematical universe, that was only one of his great projects. Because Newton had another, much more secret obsession. One that has, for a long time, been kind of overlooked. His work as a theologian.
Now for Newton, these two things weren't in conflict at all. They were like parallel paths to understanding ultimate reality. The exact same mind that was decoding the laws of motion was also meticulously analyzing biblical prophecy. The intellect that defined gravity was also trying to define the very nature of God.
And let's be clear, this was no casual hobby. Isaac Newton wrote over 1 million words on theology, alchemy, and biblical studies. That's actually more than he wrote on science and mathematics combined. This wasn't a side project for him. This was a central passion.
So how did these two worlds connect in his mind? Well, for Newton, his scientific discoveries weren't pulling him away from faith. Just the opposite. They were providing the evidence. It's like he was putting the universe on trial, and the verdict pointed directly to a creator.
His logic, which we now call the argument from design, was beautifully simple. First, he observed that the universe runs like this perfectly tuned machine. Then, he formulated its rules into elegant mathematical laws. And for him, the conclusion was inescapable. This level of intricate order and precision couldn't be the result of just random chance. It had to come from an intelligent designer.
And he wasn't shy about it. He stated this conviction plainly, right there in his most famous scientific work, the Principia. For him, the beautiful system of the cosmos wasn't some happy accident. It was a masterpiece that pointed directly to the counsel of an intelligent and powerful being.
But, and this is a really key point, for Newton, this being wasn't some distant creator who just wound up the universal clock and then walked away. In fact, he actively and passionately argued against that very idea. That idea is called deism, the belief in a sort of clockmaker God. And Newton, he completely rejected it. He believed God was actively involved, constantly sustaining the universe and upholding the very laws he had created in the first place.
So, if the universe was God's first book, revealing his power and intellect, Newton believed there was a second one, the Bible. And you better believe he studied it with the same scientific rigor he applied to the cosmos.
He put scripture under the same kind of microscope he used for the natural world. He was searching for internal consistency, for historical accuracy. He painstakingly mapped out biblical timelines, convinced that the prophetic texts contained a kind of coded blueprint of God's plan. In his view, the Bible was a divinely inspired document, and miracles were just the universe's lawgiver choosing to occasionally suspend his own laws.
So, okay, a 17th century scientist was deeply religious. Why does his secret theology still matter to us today? Because Newton's integrated worldview didn't just die with him. It actually went on to shape the entire conversation about science and faith for centuries.
Newton's work gave people a powerful framework for seeing science and faith not as enemies, but as partners. He helped build the very foundation for what's called natural theology, the idea that we can learn about a creator by studying the natural world. And his methods had a huge impact on Christian apologetics, that is, the practice of defending the faith.
So the ultimate takeaway here is pretty profound. One of the greatest scientific minds in history saw zero conflict between faith and reason. To him, they were just two different languages telling the same grand story, two essential tools you need in the quest for truth.
And that really leaves us with a final question to think about. In our modern age, where science and faith are so often pitted against each other as enemies, does knowing that the father of modern physics was so deeply driven by theological conviction,
Does that change how we should approach that conversation today?